All right, it looks like we are live. Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another segment here where I am taking content similar to the podcast and discussing it here on our YouTube channel because why not? Today we have Amanda Garcia. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, hello. Thanks for having me.
Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and about what we're going to be talking about?
Yes, of course. So I'm Amanda Garcia Torres, and today we're going to be talking with you about how we can use, therapy, chairwork therapy, to combat the impact of oppression. Um, I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in New York City, and I'm the co-director of training for the Transformational Chairwork Psychotherapy Project. I'm really passionate about addressing human suffering. And so I've been drawn to working with people from historically oppressed populations, so like LGBTQIA, Latinx, Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, people with disabilities, people impacted by HIV, AIDS, etc. I think of people as being made up of many parts. And the kind of therapy I do is called chairwork psychotherapy. Chairwork is an experiential form of therapy. So when we're doing that, we're being really active. We are engaging in enactments, or we're giving voice, channeling one of our many internal parts. So for example, if someone comes into a session and they've just had an argument with a sibling, I might say to someone, why don't you move over to this other chair and let's pretend that your sister is in the room with us. And I'd like you to talk to her about what's going on between the two of you. Or say someone comes into a session and they've really had a hard time with their anxiety over the past week. I might say to them, all right, let's move to this other chair, and I'd like you to see if you can allow yourself to just channel and really become your anxiety. And so they would give voice in that way. But our goals here are that someone is speaking from their heart and not so much from their head. And that by doing that, we hope that will strengthen, their ego, or we can think of it as their healthy adult self. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And what kind of oppression will we be discussing today? Because there's all sorts. And by the way, everybody, we have done this episode. Maybe it must have been about a month ago. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, like other Instagram lives, sometimes this one got deleted. So we're repeating it, we're redoing it here on this platform where it's a little bit more secure. And so maybe you've been here with us prior listening to this talk. It's the exact same one. And Amanda is going to guide us through, or myself, but all of you can join in through an exercise towards the end. It's going to live on the YouTube channel, so you can come back and watch it later. We welcome you to drop your questions in the chat. In the chat function. I just dropped off a little note there. And again, bear with me as I am navigating this new system. But Amanda, back to you. If you can tell us a little bit of what kind of oppression are we going to be talking about? What form, does it take place in our work?
Mm-hmm. By the way, you're doing great with the platform. So,
I'm
um,
fine.
yes. So, we're talking about oppression today. We're really talking about identity-based oppression, and we're talking about internalized oppression. So we're talking about the impact of things like discrimination or problematic social norms. And this can look like, when we talk about social norms, we can, reference things like heteronormativity, cisnormativity, or any other, discrimination based on someone's status in a certain part of their life. Say they have an addiction issue, or something based on their immigration status. These problematic internalizations can also show up like, colorism, other forms of self-hatred, etc. So that's what we'll be really keeping in mind today.
Okay. Yeah, I think that there are many different forms of discrimination. I'll be honest with everybody, when Amanda brought up this topic for us, I was thinking of discrimination in the world of psychology, because there's so much discrimination like within our diagnosis manual, all the theories that were created. But we are going to be discussing discrimination as Amanda described in, day-to-day lives of people of color out in society. So just wanted to validate that point. So what impact have you seen oppression, take form within your clients?
Yeah. So, beyond the impacts that I've felt myself so far in life, I've seen a lot of things, and we often see a few sort of core things repeat themselves. So, this impact generally leads to traumatization, right? That's really what it comes down to, because it is traumatizing to exist within an oppressive system, within an oppressive society, within an oppressive world. So we see traumatization and the impacts of that. We also see things like internalized oppression, so that's self-hatred, colorism, internalized misogyny, internalized homophobia, etc., things like that. And we see, people show up with identity issues, that they may feel totally disconnected from certain parts of themselves, parts that maybe they were told at some point that they needed to push away, or maybe parts that they pushed away just to survive. But that can be very painful. We can also see issues with someone's relationship to their own voice. So they may, on one end of the spectrum, find themselves being really passive or very quiet in their day-to-day life. Or on the other end, struggling with assertiveness in the sense that they move very quickly from assertiveness to aggression, right? So there's a problematic relationship with voice. And then we can also see sort of an excessive reliance on coping behaviors, problematic coping behaviors. So things like excessive spending beyond your means. I mean, it was just Black Friday. Excessive use of substances, dangerous sex habits that put your health at risk. But these are things that are rooted in the pain of oppression. Right? So we want to be really kind about the coping behaviors. They're rooted in pain. Right? So these are the ways that this can really impact people.
Yeah, and I think, to kind of just word some of these things in clinical format, sometimes my mind is splitting between two different topics that I want to bring up, but I'll go with the one that I just mentioned. What we see is also anxiety, right? Increased levels of depression. And that depression stems from that confusion, perhaps, of identity. And it also depends on where you live in the world. So, where you live in society, are you in a affluent white community, or do you work in a setting that you're not comfortable with, and so you are being oppressed? And the settings where you constantly frequent at, that's going to impact you and your mental health, right? Because there's going to be some elements of oppression potentially at play.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then depression, anxiety, even PTSD, if you already have negative experience, right, in with systems or with settings like that, where where trauma has occurred, you can get re-triggered. So those are some of the common things that we noticed. But beyond that, there's also this form of dissociation. Dissociation meaning it's a defense mechanism that humans tend to partake in. It happens so automatically within us, and it looks like we are daydreaming, but we're actually just surviving. We are
Mm-hmm.
physically present, but mentally we are not present, and even emotionally we can numb out. And again, we do this to help ourselves just survive the trigger that has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of my high functioning adults that have many, many, many experiences of being oppressed use that as a coping skill so that they could just get over this other form of oppression. Maybe that's going on in a work meeting. Maybe that's going on at their kids' schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they dissociate, they're protected. They don't feel the words, the wounds that are coming through,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To just superarlo, like overcome it. So that dissociation clinically, it could get deeper and deeper and even worse, because I find that it can also become kind of like a bad habit. Sometimes some folks tend
Mm-hmm.
to
Yes.
choose to use it at times because it feels good to not feel in some instances. And sometimes it isn't about that. They don't even feel unsafe. They just feel bored, so they could dissociate. So I find that very, very fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well, why not do it? I'm so good at it. I know it works. Like, and if we're honest with ourselves, who wouldn't? If we had the capacity, right, to be able to switch that kind of button on sometimes to make ourselves more comfortable, or to check out.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it's really hard to judge that. It's like, well, who wouldn't do that?
Yeah. So you use a very interesting modality, chairwork therapy. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it was actually through you that I found out about chairwork therapy.
Yeah, cool. And I always feel like really special when I'm able to introduce this to someone. So I'm really happy that through me, you're able to be aware that this is a thing. So yeah, that makes me really happy. So chair work is something that comes from old work, right? This is something that comes out of the field of psychodrama. Right? The founder of psychodrama, Jacob Moreno, created chair work, and he used to practice this within a group setting. And all people in a group would participate within the dialogue enactment, right? But then Moreno taught this to a guy named Fritz Perls, Dr. Fritz Perls, and he later became the founder of Gestalt therapy. So he's the one who took chair work and elevated it to, essentially an art form, to something that was so clinically powerful. And he also used to practice it in a setting with an audience. So the way that we define chair work is by saying that it's a way of working that is very healing and transformative, and it moves from two basic beliefs. The first belief being that it is healing and transformative for us to give voice or channel our inner parts. The second belief is that it can also be healing and transformative for us to engage in imaginary enactments or dialogues. And these can be enactments from the past, from the present, or from the future. So chair work can be very emotionally intense. There's a lot of energy involved, and you can never really know what's going to happen. And that's kind of what I love about it as well. So that's the sort of short historical lesson and some summation of where we're at with that today.
So chair work, and I believe I asked this in the last interview, it's similar, as you're saying, well, it has foundations of Gestalt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe to the audience a very brief synopsis, or in general, what is Gestalt therapy?
So this is a good question. I want to make it really clear that I'm not a Gestalt therapist. So if my definition's a bit clunky, it's because I haven't formally trained in Gestalt. Though I've made my career, my life about chairwork therapy, which comes from Gestalt. I'm not a Gestalt therapist. So any Gestalt therapy folks out there, sorry in advance.
I can describe it. I'll describe it a bit, and you can pull it up.
On here and now, right? Focus on here and now, parts, unfinished business. Maybe you should do this. Yeah.
It's very client-centered, as I feel like most approaches are, but we should say it's client-centered, and it helps to the client to stay very, very focused in the present, as you're saying, in the here and now, what's happening, with their body in the moment of where they're sitting, where they're placed, right, in their environment, rather than on past experiences. So you hit the nail on the head, if that's the correct saying, where it's very just centered. It is different than mindfulness, because I think that Gestalt therapy takes a very observational approach to the client. So the therapist is very, notices like, oh, I noticed that your hand is folded, or the knuckles are folded a bit. I noticed that you're crossing your legs, right? So there's a lot of noticing and observation from therapist to client, so that the client can become more aware of their nonverbal expression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Sort of every part is saying something, right? So those clenched knuckles. All right. Well, what are they saying? What if you gave voice to them? What would happen?
So how do you blend then chair work with clients that have experiences of oppression?
So I do this in a few different ways. Again, I think about this in sort of a keeping in mind some of the core issues or the core problems that can come up when we experience oppression. Those things that I was saying before, the traumatization, internalized oppression, and things like that. So there's a number of ways that I work with this. So one of the sort of more straightforward examples might be, someone has an experience of, targeted racism when they're in public. Say they're harassed or even assaulted. So using Chairwork, we can create the scenario so that this person can have a direct dialogue or confrontation with whoever or whatever hurt them. So I did work with someone who I'd been working with for some time, and she came into a session one day and was absolutely devastated and so upset because she had been verbally attacked and harassed at her neighborhood favorite coffee shop. This is a place that she talked about all the time because she was always there, and a place she loved going to and had been going to for many years. So, we did share work about it because I do share work about everything. But with this, we set up a dialogue. So I took out 2 chairs, one for her and one for the person, the man who attacked her. And this person is visibly, Latina. And the person who attacked her was a white man. And so we set up these chairs and had her imagine this white man, this person who attacked her, across from her, and asked her just to give voice to whatever she was feeling. And so she cycled through, anger, rage, frustration, disappointment, deep sadness, and then defiance. Right? So we can use chair work to have direct confrontations. And then, after I did that with her, had her move to, we took away the attacker chair because we were done with him. Then I had her stand behind her chair and do some, what can be called sort of existential intentionality. Had her claim her truth, claim her power. And she said things, like, I have the right to exist in the world. I have the right to take up space. I have the right to use my voice to speak Spanish or to speak English. She said things like that. And so we can use chair work to do the confrontation work, and also, I think even more importantly, sort of have someone reclaim their power, reclaim their authority, and reclaim their right to be in the world. So that's just a couple ways that this can look.
Interesting. And so, how is it that the oppression is? What I want to ask is, like, how do you combat oppression in situations like that?
Mhm.
Is it that the client feels that empowerment to be able to utilize, in this case, her voice against the white male that attacked her?
Yeah, so there's the sort of the feelings of empowerment and catharsis too, with doing the direct confrontation, sort of getting to do that.
And that
So
makes sense because it's in a safe setting with the safe person, right? And I assume that there's some preparation. With
yeah,
EMDR, there's like a lot of preparation, but no?
no.
So you go straight into it.
Yep. I mean, I talk to my people. I mean,
I
if
love
I'm
that.
doing trauma-focused work, I have a little bit more of a structure. I spend time talking about, let's explore together. What does comfort and safety mean to you? We make sure we have the grounding tools so that at the end of the session, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, so that they have a plan for how they're going to care for themselves. But when it comes to something like this, no, I don't have a plan. I sort of learn about the incident, and then, all right, let's do chair work about it. Let's go through this. So I was able to do this particular case, do this work, just a few days after the incident happened.
Okay. And how do you track progress with chair work?
Yeah. So we track progress, partially by sort of assessing for something, interesting, like boredom. So say if I'm doing something that's more trauma focused, or I'm working with this person about the harassment, about the violation they experienced. And I'm having her talk to this white man, week after week. Say it took more than one session. Sometimes it does. At some point, there's always this moment I've noticed that the person gets bored. That, it's like, I'm so pissed at you. I can't believe you said that to me. How dare you? And then eventually you kind of see that, yeah, I see you. I'm still pissed at you, but I'm kind of over it, or I don't really want to talk to you. Or as I see you now, I'm not, at a 10 on the anger scale. I'm like at a 4. I'm mildly annoyed with you, but not really feeling it. I'm not really into it. So I notice, and I look for things kind of like boredom. That it's not that someone doesn't want to do the work. It's that now we're barking up the wrong tree. Now, if we press it, we're going to make something where there is nothing there, because the unfinished business is resolved.
Okay.
Or parts have been integrated, or they're no longer feeling traumatized. So that's a big thing that I look for. With Chairwork, it's hard to fake it. If we have you imagine speaking from a part or talking to someone or something, we can't fake things generally like tears, the emotionality, rage. I look for emotional intensity. When there's not any, that means, okay, maybe we're not doing the right thing, or maybe like you're good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I look for. If that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And yeah, you mentioned, that the parts get integrated, and that's similar verbiage that we use also in EMDR. And EMDR, it's the desensitization phase 4, where we can tell like that we're kind of going like, their number is at a 0. There's no more that they can give to that memory because they're desensitized from it. They feel no more. They're kind of all squeezed out. Like, I'm good. I feel that distance from it. I no longer allow that memory and that incident to define me or to take over my life. I'm able to see it, and leave it back there and move forward. So it sounds like there's that similar feel of tracking progress with that.
Yes. There's no formal tracking progress, a process. I mean, but that's just how I work. Yeah.
Okay. And what are ways that you suggest as we start to wrap up here this talk? So if anyone has all 5 of you, if any of you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. But in general, how do you suggest for folks to combat oppression? Whether, they're in treatment or not treatment, this is just a general question. What are some good ways to combat oppression?
So, I know that you're saying in treatment or not in treatment. I tend to veer away from kind of the more general self-help, because that's not my expertise. I don't consider myself kind of a self-help person. I'm a chairwork person, so that's my language, and that's what I know how to do. I can speak with authority on that. So I'll do my best to kind of create that bridge, not just talk about chairwork. But forgive me if that's what I end up doing.
All right.
So I find that, doing things like engaging with our own inner healthy adults, our own inner healthy leaders on a regular basis, that is the way for us to combat oppression. Oppression is traumatic because of the sense of helplessness that it creates. Things are traumatic because of the element of helplessness. So whatever we can do to fight against that is absolutely important. So I ask people to do things like, do inner leader affirmations. So they might on a daily basis, not just in session, do something like, I'll use myself as an example. They might start their day saying, okay, I'm Amanda Garcia Torres. I have the right to exist in this world. I have the right to take space. I have the right to move freely. I have the right to pursue the path. My path as a healer. This is my truth. This is my life. No one can change that. So might have someone practice something like that on their own. Another thing that I found to be really important is the practice of self-compassion. I think that when we're traumatized and we're constantly experiencing oppression, along with that, our inner critics can get kind of especially riled up and vicious. And we can be very hard on ourselves with how we're handling oppression, with how we're performing in life. So I find that practicing self-compassion is also very important. In my work, I follow a self-compassion meditation, a specific script. And this is something that I share with people. But really any way that someone can develop their own sense of self-compassion, self-compassion itself. is very, very helpful. So these are just, some of the ways to do that.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And before we go to the activity, I just want to add to this question that I think, also in a non-clinical sense, it's important for us to start at home, to start that work with the people around us and kind of get a gauge, of people's experiences of oppression. Sometimes there's some clients that come in and they don't, sorry, I'm right by a train. I don't know if you all hear that. There's a ruckus out there. But some clients come in and they are describing, moments of microaggressions or stereotypes or traumatic incidents without even realizing that those are traumas, that those are microaggressions, that those are moments of oppression, right? Because it's become so normalized. So by starting to talk about these incidents, again, vulnerability is strength. We can be able to target them. We can be able to help ourselves and even, start therapy if that's what you want, or start your journey towards healing that oppression, seeing how it impacted you. Because again, Amanda and I can experience the same attack, but for one of us, maybe it's like it doesn't affect me. And maybe for Amanda, it affects her so much that it even creates PTSD, right? So different incidents affect everybody in a different way. Not everything is oppression for everyone, but it's still so important to talk about it and to not just suppress and suppress. In our own community, it's so common for us to move forward, right? Think about the next, be very future oriented, because crying is for the weak. We shouldn't mind our feelings, right? And I think that narrative has been so harmful to us. So let's stop that narrative. Let's pause and reflect and tend to the feelings. So
create space for those things to be expressed.
yeah, we have a comment here from Cesar. Even the presence of Black, Indigenous, people of color doing therapy is so healing. Feeling understood and taking the microaggression seriously and not trying to CBT it is so validating. Let's never forget that representation matters. Thank you, Cesar. Yes.
Thank you, Cesar. Yeah, that there's only so much of challenging that we can do to sort of thought distortions, because at the end of the day, oppression is oppression, right? Injustice is injustice, and it's going to be that no matter how much we try to sort of positive self-talk ourselves, right? It's not that the problem is internal, it's that the problem is external, and we're having an internal reaction to it, and we are justified in having that internal reaction. So, I think I found that chair work is a way for me to balance the two. That, all right, I work with my people and we name oppression, help them develop the language for it. But then I go that step further, because I found that when we don't go the step further of, okay, now I can label that thing as a microaggression, we're all just kind of bummed out because now we have the language to name the monsters, right? But I don't have the tools. Now I see them for what they are, and now I'm kind of overwhelmed with this information. So using chair work to then access the energy, to have the internal courage, to also have the capacity to protect your heart. You're talking before about two people can experience the same thing. One of them, it will just kind of roll off their back, and for the other, it'll really get to their sort of vulnerable, tender heart area. So doing work so that that's protected, right? Yeah.
And that's actually a good place to answer this question. How to use chair work with folks that are just becoming aware of their oppression, by Sharon.
So when it comes to that, there sometimes for people this can be a sort of a moment, right? A split in their life or in their timeline. Kind of like when someone experiences severe trauma, that there was my life before the trauma and there's my life after. There's my life before my awareness and my life after. And so I can actually, using two chairs, two spaces, have them give voice to both of these parts of themselves. So the part, so I'm Amanda, I think the world is great. I see everyone as equal, or, I don't see color. I don't think people see my color. Things are fine. Sometimes people are weird with me, but whatever, things are good. right? So that's if I'm using myself as a generic example. And then maybe I go to another part. You know, I'm Amanda. I see the injustice in the world. I'm so distraught because of this. I don't know what to do. It's all over the place, and I feel helpless. Right? So giving someone a way to express what it's like to come into knowing. So that can be a thing to do. And then also, you know, if someone wants to do more general identity work, I just did that this evening, actually. Just did some identity work with someone, making the space so that, you know, using, you know, perhaps one chair, they can give voice to, you know, say it's someone who's biracial. They can voice their white self, right? Spend time with that. And then moving to the other chair and giving voice to, you know, their brown self or their black self, and having them just go back and forth, not with any agenda of them choosing one side or the other, but just to allow them the space to explore and to really acknowledge these two parts as equally real. So this is just some sort of general places to start there.
Thank you. Well, let's segue into our exercise. Amanda, what is it called?
So I think today I'd like to do, I was thinking about this afternoon, like, what am I going to do with Adriana today? So, so I think I'd like to do some inner leader work with you,
Okay.
if that's all right. This is something that, you know, I'll sort of just tell you what to say, and, you know, as we go along, you can make adjustments if something's not quite fitting or doesn't really resonate for you. Feel free to change it.
Okay. Is the banner correct?
Yes. So this is an inner leader affirmation.
Inner leader
Inner
affirmation.
leader is great.
Let me just fix that. All right. So after I do this, I'm all yours. And everybody that's watching, again, feel free to drop your questions. We will get to them after this exercise. Take it away, Amanda.
Cool. All right. So I see that, okay, you're all mic'd up. Oops, so you don't have, so you can't stand. That's fine. How could you not be prepared for chair? No.
I could kind of stand. I could go to my couch. Oh, wrong side. I don't know what to do. I have a couch right there.
That's okay. That's okay. I think what I'd like you to do, however much you can, if you could just even move an inch or two in your seat, just like the tiniest bit, that
Like
would be
to
great.
where?
You can just move in the seat itself.
Oh, like last
Do like
time.
you can just
Okay,
do
I
the
got you.
tiniest little scoot.
I got you.
Perfect. Yes. Yes. Just any movement just to signify to like our emotional selves that we're going into something else. Cool.
Yes.
And I'd like you to just take a few moments to take some breaths that feel good for you, that feel filling. And as you're breathing, you know, if you want to imagine kind of a beam of light, you know, kind of moving up from the ground, up through your spine, up to the top of your head. Sort of filling you up with light and strength. And I'd encourage you to either, you know, you can have your eyes open or focus on a spot on the floor, close your eyes, whatever is helpful for you. So I'd like you to start with, I am Adriana.
Out loud.
Yeah, you can say that out loud.
I'm Adriana.
I'm Adriana, and I have many parts.
I'm Adriana, and I have many parts.
Some of these parts are wonderful.
Some of these parts are wonderful.
Some of them are full of creativity and courage.
Some of them are full of creativity and courage.
Some of them are full of joy.
Some of them are
Are
filled
full of
with joy.
joy. Mm-hmm.
Filled with joy?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are filled with joy.
And some of them are very good at getting work done.
Some of them are very good at
Getting work done.
getting worked at.
I also have other parts.
I also have other parts.
Some of those parts are very unhelpful.
Some of those parts are very unhelpful.
Some of them are in pain.
Some of them are in pain.
Some are struggling.
Some are struggling.
Some of them are impulsive.
Some of them are impulsive.
And some of them have darkness.
And some of them have darkness.
I have all of these parts.
I have all of these parts.
These are just parts.
These are just parts.
They are not my entirety.
They are not my entirety.
I am the inner leader.
I am the inner leader.
I'm the healthy adult.
I'm the healthy adult.
This is my life.
This is my life.
And I'm in charge.
And I'm in charge.
I have many parts.
I have many parts.
I am the inner leader.
I am the inner leader.
And this is my life.
And this is my life.
And I'm in charge.
I'm in charge.
And just allow yourself to just feel that for a few moments. And when you feel complete, you can let that go. Do your scooch. You do your scooch back. No, I'm so bossy when I do chair work, telling people to move around all over the place. Say this, say that.
It's good. I think it's helpful for the parts to kind of, readjust, realign, separate themselves. I think that's very symbolic and helpful.
Good, good, glad. Wondering, did any of that resonate for you? Did you feel connected to any of it? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I felt connected to all the affirmations. I think, it's definitely very vulnerable because we're being recorded here.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's vulnerable admitting these out loud, but it's also helpful nurturing them, later on as you guided me to that, because I wouldn't have ever thought to nurture myself using those affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that.
Thank you for doing that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for guiding us.
So that's an example of how we get at empowerment, and I think it's important for me to be specific as to how I define empowerment, because we all have different definitions here. So I think of empowerment as shifting the internal balance away from harmful forces and toward our inner leader, toward our healthy adult self. That is my definition of empowerment. So when we're working on empowerment, we're going on a path where we're now less at the mercy of harmful forces and less at the mercy of these, maybe difficult or unhelpful inner parts, like our inner critic or unhelpful coping parts. And our healthy adult, our inner leaders in charge. And our inner leaders, these are the parts that have a good relationship to their voice. They claim power, they have wisdom, they have courage, they have strategy in how they approach life, and they can hold the complexity that we experience in day-to-day living, right? So again, this goes back to how we can combat oppression. We can combat the sense of helplessness and therefore prevent someone from feeling highly traumatized or feeling less traumatized when they experience oppression, right? And that itself is protective. And that's how, we can support people in their survival. So I just wanted to make that really clear as to where I'm coming from, what my framework is.
My bad. Can you give me the definition again of empowerment? I think I have shift. It's the shift of the internal forces of our inner leader.
Yeah. So shifting the internal balance away from harmful forces and toward our inner leader or healthy adult self. Kind of whatever word we want to use for that, but
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about shifting that balance and reclaiming that energy, reclaiming the power and authority in our life.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this is all really, really powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Amanda. I think that we are done for this. We have a positive comment here. So empowering. I'm going to use this in supervision with my trainees. That said,
Yay!
love that. Thank you for
That's
your
so
support.
exciting.
Thanks for being here.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So Amanda, where can people find out more about you and get trained with Chairwork?
Yeah. So you can find more about me, by connecting with me or following my work on Instagram, Facebook. I'm there on my username is Chairwork Therapy NYC. You can also visit my website, chairworktherapynyc.com. And right now, I'm co-teaching a number of different, a couple of different courses for clinicians who want to learn chair work. We're going to be starting our second international online course in January. It's geared towards Russian therapists because we're partnering with therapists there for this one. But English-speaking therapists are welcome, as there will be simultaneous translation. I know that we will be doing additional online courses next year in case that one's not a good fit or doesn't work for your schedule. And, if you just like to get kind of an introductory lesson in chair work, in how you use chair work to combat the impact of historical oppression, I'd invite you to join our upcoming live webinar this upcoming Sunday, December 13th. It's being hosted by the New York Institute of Gestalt Therapy, which was the original institute founded by Dr. Pearls and his wife, Laura Pearls. So we're very excited about that, for them to be hosting us. And I'll be presenting along with my mentor and colleague, Dr. Scott Kellogg, and we'll be talking more about this. So yeah, if anyone wants that information, I can definitely send that to Adriana, and it's also available on my social media accounts.
Okay, awesome. I was trying to stick it in a banner, but I did not get to it, but I'll stick it in the comments section in the description of this talk. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. From Sharon, thank you for allowing us to witness the exercise. It brought us some good food for thought.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Sharon.
Amanda. You are a gem. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Adriana. Thank you
you
for
as a
having me
colleague
again.
and friend.
Yes, it was really wonderful to see you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.